Hey, all you amazing people! Welcome to Love on Record, the podcast where we turn up the volume on stories of love, connection, and the wild, wonderful ways that people are shaping a kinder world. Every episode, we hit record on conversations that remind us that we have the power to choose love each and every day. Today, we're vibing with Wendy White, the visionary founder of Let's Choose Love and Continuum Consulting, whose personal mission of love and connection cannot be missed. So whether you're on your morning commute, cooking up something delicious, or just taking a break, join us for this incredible conversation. Hey everyone, I'm Brian. I'm one of the team members here at Let's Choose Love. We're switching things up a little bit today because we wanted to have the opportunity to actually sit down with Wendy White, the founder of Let's Choose Love. So Wendy, could you please start by just introducing yourself to our listeners, who you are, where you're from?
Hi, so I'm Wendy White. I'm originally from New York. I'm a Long Islander, but I currently live and reside in Asheville, North Carolina. And I have a business called Continuum Consulting Services that I co-founded with Lisa Marie Main. And we have always been committed to giving back to the world. So 5% of whatever we take in, it goes back out to our communities.
For those who don't know, could you explain a little bit about what Let's Choose Love is, what it looks like, what it is as an organization?
So it kind of started when, I was looking at all the different divides that were coming amongst us that really were amplified during COVID and the pandemic. I mean, we had political divides, we had social divides, we had racial divides. And I really started to do a lot of meditating and praying about what is it that can bridge these divides. And so one of the things that came to me is, in its simplest, purest form, if we all chose love, if we let love be our guide in every decision, in every interaction, then it wouldn't really matter any of the things that divided us because love would be the thing that connected us. And if we connected there, we could sort of move forward and resolve anything. And so that's when sort of the concept for an invitation to Let's Choose Love emerged during that time.
So you're talking about COVID here. Was there a specific moment or event or action when you were just like, wow, like this is what I need to do, this is what happened? Or was it kind of more gradual just throughout that time?
It was a little more gradual, sort of the angst, and I noticed that people were just paralyzed in fear. They were stuck in their homes, and all I could see is so much in the world that needed to happen, but I wasn't seeing anybody getting off their couch and doing anything about it. And so when I was doing my meditation, the idea just sort of flowed through me as far as what if I invited people to choose love? What is it that stops them from doing it? There's so much to be done in the world. How could I invite people to do something? Like you can't solve everything, but there is something we each can do. What is your passion? What is your calling? What do you really care about? And then how can I provide a path forward that would allow people to step up and actually take action? Because right now, we don't need people looking and sitting back and complaining about everything and going into deeper, deeper fear. We need people to look at proactive solutions on what we could do to help resolve some of the challenges we have. So I started to really think, why weren't people doing that? And I realized there's usually a couple of key things. One is they don't really believe in themselves enough, or they don't believe that they can do something different. Or once they have the belief, they might not understand how they can take their idea and bring it to fruition into something that's actionable, that does make a difference. And the other is money. And so I thought, like, well, what can we do at Let's Choose Love to overcome some of those barriers? And so I was thinking that, like, everybody has an idea and a passion, and it doesn't really matter what you do. It matters that you do something. And so I was like, well, how can we offer mini grants as a way to entice people, encourage people to take action that they could apply with an idea of what they want to do? And the ideas are all over the board. I mean, we've had people that want to save horses. We have people that want to like address poverty or abuse with women or, environmental issues. I mean, it could be almost anything that helps to bring forward a positive solution to a community or global challenge. And then we gave them money to be able to fund a project with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then we provided a coach. So Continuum is a leadership and organizational development consulting firm. So we have lots of people within our network that are coaches. So we would then pair the grantee up with a coach that would then work with them to encourage people to be able to do what they wanted to do, but also to be able to break down their idea in a way that they can actually know the steps forward to bring it to action. And so we found that that was like really magic when we put it out there. And then the applications came and coaches were excited. And before we knew it, we were funding grants all over the country and making a positive impact in ways we never thought that we could.
That is So amazing. I get chills every time I hear about that. And just thinking about the ways that Let's Choose Love is able to empower individuals, not just through money, but like you said, through coaching and other resources as well. It's just absolutely amazing to me. And I would also love to take kind of a step back. You talked about this moment and this feeling of fear and this divide during COVID that you were feeling. But I'm curious if there was anything before COVID, because I feel like when I talk to you, love is just so deeply ingrained in your nature and who you are as a person. I know this whole Let's Choose Love giving back to people was not just started within you during COVID. So I'm curious if there was anything growing up or throughout your life that like first inspired your passion for giving back or for making a difference.
I never really I can't even remember not wanting to do that. I remember
Yeah.
when I was, like, in 5th or 6th grade, and I grew up on Long Island, and I wanted to make a difference, so I organized all the kids in the neighborhood, and I formed what we called the Action Club. We did all sorts of fun things, like, we would organize carnivals for the neighborhood, and we would raise money for muscular dystrophy, or I would
Mm.
organize all the kids, and we would put on a show and use a neighbor's deck, and we would sing and do dances, and we would raise money for a charity. I would organize them all to go clean up the woods and end up with piles of trash. And I'd call the city and I say, hey, we got piles of trash here. Can you guys come and pick it up? And they did. And I think I might have been inspired. I grew up with the 60s and a lot of the
Mhm.
protests, and people were really moving forward and making a lot of social conscious decisions and actions, like the beginning of the gay rights movement, the anti war movement, where I saw where grassroots people were able to step up and really make transformational differences. And so I think that that sort of formed the blueprint. So throughout my life, I have realized that whatever I can do, whether I'm a little kid starting the Action Club and organizing the neighborhood, or as I got older and started my business, we always had a portion of the business that went back out to support the community. For instance, when I was living in Durham, North Carolina, I wanted to find a way to bring people together. And I think music is a great way to do it. So we started a blues jam because blues sort of connects everybody, connects the different races, it connects young people and old people. And so for 6 years, we had a blues jam every other Wednesday night at a local pub. And that was a way to bring community together. We used to run a film and music festival. So we've always done something to kind of give back to the community. And Let's Choose Love is a culmination of that.
That's so cool to hear about all of the things that you've done and like a blues jam. Hello, that sounds so fun. That sounds so cool. And there's one word that you keep bringing up that I kind of have heard a lot is this word of community and this idea of community. And I'm just curious, what does the Let's Choose Love community mean to you? And then also, you mentioned being from Asheville. I know Hurricane Helene recently hit. So could you talk a little bit as well about what Let's Choose Love is doing within your home community of Asheville?
Well, I think everything has to be resolved within community. Like we need connection more than ever, especially as our world is changing and shifting. We've become more and more disconnected, but we can do so much more when we're together. So I'm always studying that. Like I spent a lot of time, probably about 30 years, working with Sister Cities International, which is an organization that promotes people to people diplomacy. And so I started being involved in that when I was in my 20s. And I realized that part of their thing is like if you got to know people, you connect to people, you connect to cultures, you were less likely to bomb each other if you knew somebody in that country, right? So it was a peaceful effort. So, community became instilled in me from an international perspective with a lot of the sister cities efforts. And then when the hurricane hit Asheville, it was just devastating. The second worst hurricane since Katrina. And we were not expecting it in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of our country, that we would have that level of devastation. And I remember we didn't have water, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have internet for weeks and months for some of it. Some people are still just getting some of that, and it's 7 months on. But I got tired of just like sitting on my porch crying because all you heard on the radio was, it's gone, it's gone. The River Arts District, it's gone. Swannanoa, it's gone. And I'm like, oh, there's got to be something left because all you're here and you're in your little bubble are all these things that are disasters and what's wrong. That's kind of all you focus on. And you have to be really intentional to break through that noise and figure out what is still here. What are the gems that we can build upon? And how is community really forming and helping to support us us moving forward. So I took my camera and went out and like went underneath, like drove underneath and around trees and power lines and to see where I could go and find roads that were open. And I just explored the different communities and started taking pictures of what was still here. And so I was like, oh, my favorite coffee place, Dynamite Coffee, whoo, it's still here. And I took a picture. Or like, oh, the Gray Eagle, my favorite place to go listen to music. Took a picture. It's still here. And so that just led to me and others starting to just interview people, the amazing outpouring of love that came in the form of volunteers from around the country. I interviewed people that had been blocked in, because all the roads were blocked and hundreds of trees gone and they couldn't get out and all they had was their community. And how did they self-organize to be able to take care of each other and look at how did they move forward? How did they get communication out so people knew they were okay? How did they get food and water? What did they share? So this whole piece of taking action, even in the time of fear, not letting fear paralyze you, but let your empathy and your love move you forward to connect and find solutions and to help and to serve is incredibly important to me to understand and then to promote because we need a whole lot more of that in this world. We got to find a
100.
stronghold, right, that we can hold on to and figure out a way forward.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And just, I remember after the hurricane and you called me up and you were like, Brian, like, I think I know how we can make an impact. And like, that was just so powerful to me, having experienced that. And then suddenly you're just like looking for ways to reach out, looking for ways to help others. That's something that is just super inspiring to me. And I guess I'm also curious about where your strength in that moment came from. And throughout this whole journey of rebuilding Asheville, where have you continued to find strength to be able to continue pushing forward and continuing to make a difference?
Well, I think again, it's community. Who are my support systems? So, I had my Continuum community with my business and my partners. I had my family. I had my partner Mark Monchak, who really stepped up to support me. My daughter Morgan Daniels and Mark got together and figured out how to get me out of Asheville. Brian, you were there to like help to get the word out and to amplify the stories. The neighbors, the families, everybody that stepped up to support me was what gave me the foundation to go out and support others.
Ah, so inspiring. It's just, it gives me chills to just think about all of the impacts. So that's amazing. And I guess I'm curious as well about while you were creating Let's Choose Love, have you experienced any other sorts of setbacks or anything else that's been a hurdle for you to kind of jump over in the creation of Let's Choose Love and in these past couple of years while it's been established?
Well, I think the greatest hurdle is funding. And so one of the things that we did is I hate money to be an obstacle. So for the first year or two, we what we did is we pretty much self-funded. So it was funded through the 5% that Continuum gives back to our business. Also, I self-funded a lot of it because I didn't want funding to be an issue for it moving forward. So where we are right now is I wanted to do the proof of concept that like, wow, this really is viable. This whole thing of supporting people around the country, looking at ways to extend love. The only criteria is we amplify the stories of ordinary people doing good in the world, which, our social media is a really important part of that. And then we last year won the Anthem Award, which is an international award that amplifies or rewards organizations that are making a positive impact in the world. That's pretty exciting. I mean, just to give you an idea is like, Taylor Swift and Elton John won last year for their work in like AIDS and getting out the vote. And of course, they were in a different category than Let's Choose Love, but we won. And so that was pretty exciting. And so, to me, that was sort of the proof that we actually had something special that we were growing. And so now it has to go beyond what we can offer. We have to go and like get more support and build up our board and get more people on board to help to direct where we're headed. And then we need funding. So right now, funding is the biggest obstacle. But I know that it's gonna come flowing in and that we're gonna be able to make this not only national but international at some point.
So inspiring. It also sounds like if Taylor Swift or Elton John ever want to donate,
Yeah,
we might
bring
be
it
able
on, bring it
to
on.
take
We'll
that.
take it.
So inspiring. And one of the things that I feel like I hear you say a lot, and it's just the proof is everywhere. Like people want this. Like this is something that people need in their lives. You've already said it in this conversation, especially right now. It's just very relevant. And this moment of love is just something that people yearn for.
And I think the encouragement is so, so important. So one of the things that is like the highlight I get to do is award the grants. So like if we keep a grant open, we might have like, like 100, a couple hundred come in within like a couple of days. And then we narrow it down. Usually we give out 10 each quarter when we have the funds to do it. And my favorite thing is I have called every single one of our grantees to award the grant. And for me to like, I feel like I'm giving out, millions of dollars, like, hi, this is Wendy White with Let's Choose Love. Congratulations. We love your idea and we're going to fund you. And it's like, they just like scream and holler and yell, like, oh, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I'm so excited. And I watch in that moment the power of just somebody being recognized for what they're doing and the impact that they're making, how that all of a sudden they just get lifted up and they do more. For many people, we might be the first grant or the first bit of money that they ever received. And then, you look on their website and they have donors and they have a Let's Choose Love sign. And it's like, we're the only ones. And then they leverage that to go back to their city and their communities and say, hey, look, well, I was funded by Let's Choose Love. Maybe, you need to step up and fund me. And so it becomes a catalyst for a lot of other growth. And a lot of it just starts. I mean, the coaching is important in helping people to develop the skills to be able to move forward and to bring their dream and vision to fruition. But also, it's just the power of somebody else believing in them can provide exponential growth. And that's something we all can do. I mean, anybody who's listening to this podcast, what we get so often is when somebody has an idea, we get a lot of yeah, buts, how are you going to do that? Yeah, but, where are you going to get the money? Yeah, but you really think you know how to make that happen? And it's just so discouraging and demoralizing. And I think a lot of efforts get nipped in the bud just by the yeah buts and people not being supportive. We can change that to yes, and I love your idea. What can I do to help? Oh, you are just terrific. And you can just watch how that shifts. And that simple act of how we receive somebody else's idea and the encouragement we each can provide, it doesn't matter if it solves every problem out there, but at least it's a drop in the water. I don't know, you guys probably have heard the starfish metaphor, but it's like, you go, the guy's walking down and the beach is just filled with all these starfish on the sand that are going to die. And somebody's walking, they pick up a starfish and they throw it back in the water. Then their partner says, well, you really think that's going to make a difference? Look at all these starfish that are going to die. And then the answer was, well, you know what? It made a difference to the one I just threw in the water. And I think we all have to start picking up starfish and throwing them in the water because our little bit does make a difference, even if it's just for that small circle of influence we have. And that's what grassroots is all about. Go out and make your difference, whatever it is. It could even be like a smile you give to the local shopping clerk to make their day. These little acts of kindness, these little acts of love add up to make a big difference.
Yeah, 100%. The starfish metaphor is so powerful and so relevant to what we're doing. That you're so right. And I guess talking about that joy in that moment of being able to call the grantees, are there any stories in particular of grantees or things that grantees have done that have really just stuck with you throughout this period and throughout this process?
Oh, there's so many. I'll share one or two. There was one woman, and I'll leave her name off for confidentiality reasons, but I called her and I reached her, and she was sitting in her car in the parking lot of a hospital because her mother was in having some major surgery. She had escaped. She had been a product of somebody who had been abused, had escaped to be able to go to be with her mom, and was sitting in the car and basically was kind of crying when my call came in. And so I called her. I said, "Congratulations!" And then I could quickly tell that it was a rough time for her. And we just
Yeah.
sat on the phone for like about an hour plus hour and a half, and she told me her story and what was going on. And she sort of shifted in that time from like tears of despair to tears of joy because her vision was she wanted to form a center where women who had been abused and their children could come and get uplifted and find resources. So she had this whole idea for this grant, and the grant, of course, was not going to fund all of that, but it did go to fund ultimately a an event that brought a lot of different people together, including some. I think the mayor or the governor came. I mean, it was some substantial people came,
Wow.
and they brought services, and then they brought women who were in that kind of situation together to share resources and hope, and that was sort of the start for her to get onto her center to create a facility. And I have no doubt she's going to do that, and I'll be invited to the ribbon cutting. But it was such a powerful experience, and she was one of our early grantees, and it just made me realize how this little bit of money, just touched somebody's heart in a big way and became the catalyst for her to be able to follow her dream. That was a very, very impactful one. Another one, it was actually a man who had just recently gotten out of prison. He'd been in prison, he was in his late 50s and had been in prison almost his whole life, starting out like, kind of getting into little bits of trouble and then, ending up where he actually murdered somebody in the parking lot of a Walmart and was thrown in prison for the rest of his life, or so he thought. He's recently been released, but he realized that the prison where they can go out, the yards were really places where there was like war and divisiveness and, murder, it just wasn't very healthy. And he wanted to transform them into a place of health and transformation where people could go and form communities and be able to get educated and to be able to provide supporting mechanisms. And so his dream was to reinvent the prison system, specifically in the yards where the prisoners would go and hang. And so we gave him funding. He had actually gotten out. He actually had prison guards that were going to support him, ex-prisoners that were going to support him, and he was going out to get interviews and to create footage to be able to go back to the state regulatory people to get permission to get 1 yard in one prison that he can go and do what was called an appreciative inquiry, which is David Cooper Ryder's appreciative inquiry. He wanted to do that in a prison yard to look at co-creating something that was going to be transformative. And so that was a pretty exciting grant to be able to give. And he, after he had applied for the grant, he got out, and we bought him a computer, an Apple computer, and got him the software so that he could go ahead and do the editing and learn that to be able to make the footage. So that was another grant that was pretty impactful.
Literally chills, chills. And I know there's so many more stories, just story after story of all these amazing moments. And I think that's just part of what makes Let's Choose Love so special and so unique. And I guess I'm also curious. So we have the grants, we have the grantees, and that's really our core. That's our root. That's how we started. That's kind of how you've described how we've started. And that's a big part of who we are today. But we're also slowly expanding into new territory. We have this podcast. You mentioned David Cooper Ryder, and we had some work with him. So can you talk about a couple more avenues that Let's Choose Love is taking to make a difference in the world?
So I think Let's Choose Love is now becoming like an umbrella for multiple different activities to come, all of them in service of extending love. So what we've created so far is, yes, we have the grants. That's one avenue, but another one is with the Asheville. We ended up forming what we called Asheville Rising, Love Along the Way, which turned out to be, like a lot of videos, but we're also partnering with some community activists that are looking at rebuilding Asheville. Through that, also did the Gem Show. So we wanted to really support the artists in the River Arts District that got flooded out. And so we partnered with the Carharts, who run the largest gem shows in the country. And we sent artists and their artwork to the Tucson Gem Show, where in the middle of the gem show, they set up a whole art gallery and were able to sell their art. And it was really encouraging to the artists. And then we just got back from the New Jersey Gem Show, where we took another 6 artists. So we've supported 9 artists total in being able to provide an opportunity for them to get lots of exposure, but also to be able to sell some of their paintings, which then helps them to bridge until their studios get back. Those were all under Asheville Rising. Then we partnered and did something called Crossroads Collaboratories. And we brought climate scientists, change makers, youth. We brought representatives from the Cherokee and the Sequoia Indian tribes together to be able to look at how do we reframe climate change from being something that's just this like horrible devastation, which it is, to how can we leverage hope theory and how can we leverage the best of what we are to look at some creative solutions where we actually can make a difference and people can see a path forward in order to be able to address, different issues with climate change. These Crossroads collaboratories are designed to be able to bring multi-sectors together to be able to dialogue and come up with solutions around some of these really knotty challenges we're facing today. So we're doing that. And then the newest effort is Love on Record, because one of our goals is to amplify stories of ordinary people doing good in the world.
That is so amazing to hear about all those avenues, how they've continued to grow and develop over time. And I'm curious as well, how do you see those continuing to expand? What do you see in the future for Let's Choose Love? Are there any sneak peeks you can tell us about, or is there anything that you can tell us about how you envision Let's Choose Love continuing to make a difference in the future?
Well, I think it's all quite emergent. So, one of the things is that we're very spirit led, where people come up with ideas and they come up with inspirations, then we respond. So, a couple of things that I see happening is, well, we have another nonprofit Continuum runs called 10 Greatest Gifts I Give My Children. And so I can see that potentially coming under Let's Choose Love. And so we actually start a whole effort around building and supporting families and working to sort of support healthy children. We're looking at how do we form communities with our Let's Choose Love grantees and the people that support Let's Choose Love. So we're looking at creating some community calls that we form these networks where they can all provide support as they continue to grow. Ideally, I would love to see that we have pockets of Let's Choose Love, like nodes throughout the United States and maybe throughout the world, where we might provide some of the overall kind of focus and manifesto, which is like, we envision a world where love rules, where people can boldly cross the lines that divide us and come together to form a new world and a new way of being that works for all. That's our vision. How cool it would be if we had nodes, like maybe in a high school or in a college, where they have groups that come together and they look at projects that they can do and get funded, all in the name of extending love in the world. So I think that where we can go with this is limitless, and it's only up to our creativity, our willingness to actually step forward and make the difference, and then the funding we can bring in to help support the efforts.
That is so awe-inspiring and just like crazy to think about all of the things that we can do to continue making an impact. That's so, so cool. And I guess as we begin to wrap up, I'm also wondering about advice for me or for anybody at home who wants to make a difference, but maybe doesn't know where to start, doesn't know how to go about it. What sort of advice do you have for those individuals?
I think it's about breaking through the fear. All there is fear and love. Hate even comes from fear. And so if you can only look at what is your first smallest step you can take, know that you can make a difference, like throwing that one starfish back into the ocean. What is your passion? I think we get paralyzed because problems feel so insurmountable and they're pretty big, but it doesn't mean, you don't have to wait until you have a ton of money. You don't have to wait until, you have the biggest, grandest ideas with lots of support. You just need to do something. Looking at starting with your family, starting with your community. What is your something to do, and do it? Just pick one thing that you're passionate about. It could be you have a neighbor whose husband is diagnosed with cancer and you go over and you offer some support. It could be, you run this drive. It could be that you start an entire center. Any kind of effort is important, no matter how small. What is most important is you figure out what do you need to do? What are you called to do? And you actually do it. That's your starting point.
Yeah, 100%. That's so powerful to just take that first step, that first tiny little step, no matter how small or how big it is. Just take a step, make a difference.
And there's one other thing I kind of want to talk about, that step. If that step or that motivation comes where you feel obligated to do something, like you would, I could, I should, if any of those words come up, you're probably not on the right path. When it's fueled by love, you will feel called to do it, and it will give you energy. It will give you joy. It will give you excitement. And you will do it because you want to do it, not because you would, could, ought to do it. And I think that's a differentiation that most people don't quite get. That's really, really important.
Wow, that is such a cool perspective shift. I will definitely be reflecting on that later. And just as we head off today, what is your call to action to others? What do you want others to take away from this conversation?
Well, one is find your passion, step up and do it. The other is check us out on letschooselove.org. Reach out to us. And we're always looking for ways for people to contribute, provide funding, and to connect us.
Well, thank you so much, Wendy. I appreciate all of your time.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. So appreciate it. And thank everyone out there for listening.
That's a wrap on this episode of Love on Record. Thanks so much for tuning in and letting a little extra love into your ears today. If you loved this conversation, and we know you did, make sure to check out all the details about our guest in the description. Go show them some love too. And hey, don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with someone who could use a boost of love, and keep the ripple going. Until next time, stay loud, stay kind, and keep choosing love.